The Israelites stood on the edge of the promised land, their hearts filled with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The plains of Moab stretched before them, a vast expanse of possibility, a place of waiting, and, wondering what awaited them in this new chapter. Moses, their leader for 40 long years, the man who had guided them through countless trials, was about to say goodbye. He had led them out of Egypt, from the shackles of slavery, through the Red Sea, a miraculous escape from certain doom, and across the wilderness, enduring hardship and learning to trust in God's provision. Now, at the very threshold of their dreams, he was preparing to pass the torch, to entrust the future to Joshua. Change was coming, a monumental shift in leadership, and fear was close behind, whispering doubts and anxieties. Imagine the questions swirling in their minds, the uncertainties clouding their vision. What would life be like without Moses, the shepherd who had guided them for so long? Would Joshua be strong enough, wise enough to lead them into battle and secure their inheritance? Could they really take the land God had promised, a land filled with fortified cities and formidable enemies? The future looked uncertain, a daunting unknown, and honestly the past, with all its hardships, felt so safe, so familiar. In Deuteronomy chapter 31 verse 6, a powerful message is delivered. Moses speaks words directly from God, words meant to calm their fears and ignite their courage. Be strong and courageous. Do not waver in your resolve. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. Do not let the challenges ahead paralyze you with fear, for the Lord your God goes with you. He is your constant companion, your unwavering support. He will never leave you nor forsake you. You are not alone in this journey. These words were a lifeline for trembling hearts, a beacon of hope in the face of uncertainty. This wasn't just a pep talk, a fleeting moment of encouragement. It was a promise, a solemn covenant. God was telling his people that his presence wasn't tied to Moses or any other human leader. It wasn't tied to a place, a feeling, or a routine. It was a constant, unwavering reality. God himself would go with them every step of the way into the unknown. He would not leave, he would not abandon, his faithfulness would endure. This moment on the plains of Moab, this pivotal point in Israel's history, is a mirror for our own lives, reflecting the challenges and uncertainties we face. We all face times when the future is uncertain, when the ground beneath us shifts and familiar comforts slip away, leaving us feeling vulnerable and afraid. But just as God promised the Israelites, offering them reassurance and strength, he promises us, he will never leave or forsake us. His presence is our constant companion, our unwavering hope in every season of life. God's promise matters. It's a beacon of hope, a lifeline in the storms of life, because it is anchored in who he is. His very nature is the bedrock upon which his promises stand. Leaders come and go, their influence fading with time. Places change, evolving with the relentless march of progress. Feelings rise and fall like tides responding to the pull of the moon. But God's character stands firm, an unshakable mountain in a world of shifting sands. The Israelites had learned to trust Moses, a man chosen by God to lead them, but now they needed to trust God himself, to look beyond the human vessel to the divine source. His presence wasn't limited by a person or a location. It transcends earthly boundaries. It was anchored in his faithfulness, a constant and unwavering commitment. This is a truth that reaches across centuries, echoing through the corridors of time. God's presence is not something we earn or lose, a reward for good behavior or a punishment for mistakes, based on how we feel. Our emotions are fleeting, but his presence is constant. It is not tied to how good we are, measured by human standards of righteousness, or how strong our faith seems. Even a mustard seed of faith is enough to move mountains. God is present because he has chosen to be, a sovereign act of grace and love. He keeps his promises because he is trustworthy. His word is his bond, an unbreakable covenant. When Moses told the Israelites that God would go with them, he wasn't just offering words of comfort. He was pointing them to a deeper reality, a truth that would sustain them through trials and tribulations. God's commitment to his people is unwavering, a steady light in the darkness. He is not like a human leader who might fail or leave, abandoning their followers in times of need. God's loyalty is perfect, a devotion that knows no bounds. His love is steadfast, an enduring affection that never fades. This promise is for all of us, regardless of background or circumstance. When life shifts, and the ground feels shaky, when everything around us seems uncertain, God's presence is the solid rock beneath our feet, the unshakable foundation upon which we can build our lives. He is with us, not because of who we are, not because of our achievements or our virtues, but because of who He is. His presence is a gift, freely given and eternally sustained. God's desire to be with His people is woven through the entire Bible. From the very beginning in the Garden of Eden, God walked with Adam and Eve. He was not distant or hidden. He was close, so close that they could hear His footsteps in the cool of the day. This was God's original plan to be with us. Even after sin entered the world, God did not give up on His people. He sought them out, calling, "Where are you?" His presence was a gift, not something to be earned. Though Adam and Eve had to leave the garden, God's longing to be near never faded. Throughout the Old Testament, we see God finding ways to draw near. He spoke to Abraham, visited Jacob in dreams, and appeared to Moses in a burning bush. God's presence was never far away. Even when His people failed, He kept coming closer. The story of Eden reminds us that God's heart is always for relationship. He wants to be with us. His promise to never leave is not new. It is the oldest promise of all. As the Israelites journeyed through the wilderness, God's presence became even more visible. He instructed them to build a tabernacle, a special tent where He would dwell among them. Whenever they camped, the tabernacle stood at the center, a constant reminder that God was with His people. God's presence was not just symbolic. He showed up in tangible ways. A pillar of cloud led them by day, and a pillar of fire lit their way at night. When the cloud moved, the people moved. When it stopped, they stopped. God was their guide, their protector, and their constant companion. These signs were more than miracles. They were messages. God was saying, "You are not alone. I am here." Even in the harshest desert, God's presence was as real as the sun by day and the stars by night. He provided manna for their hunger and water for their thirst. The tabernacle, the cloud, and the fire all point to a God who is not far off. He is close, involved, and deeply committed to His people's journey, even when the road is hard. God's presence did not disappear when the Israelites faced battles. In fact, it was often in the hardest moments that God showed up most powerfully. When Joshua led the people across the Jordan River, God parted the waters just as He had at the Red Sea. When they marched around Jericho, it was God who brought the walls down. Throughout Israel's history, God fought for His people. He gave courage to Gideon, wisdom to Deborah, and strength to David. In every conflict, God's presence was the difference between defeat and victory. He was not just a distant observer, He was their shield and defender. The battles were real, and so were the fears. But God's promise held firm. He did not leave His people when things got tough. He stayed close, giving them what they needed to keep going. His presence turned ordinary people into heroes of faith. And, when we face our own battles, whether they are seen or unseen, we can remember these stories. God's presence is our strength. He is with us in every fight, never leaving, never forsaking. So, the bedrock promise that God will never leave or forsake His people, a comforting thought in times of uncertainty. Well, this powerful message, it's really not just tucked away in one verse, isolated and alone. It echoes profoundly throughout the whole Bible, resonating from cover to cover. It's kind of like a song that never fades, a constant melody of divine presence. In Genesis chapter 28 verse 15, a foundational promise is laid. God tells Jacob, "I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go," a personal and protective declaration. Psalm 23 verse 4 declares with unwavering faith, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, through trials and tribulations, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, my constant companion." And then Isaiah 41 verse 10 brings comfort and reassurance to those in need. "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God," a powerful affirmation of divine support. Jesus Himself repeats this promise in Matthew 28 verse 20, solidifying its importance. "And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age," an eternal commitment to His followers. The writer of Hebrews reminds us, drawing upon this rich history of divine promises, God has said, "Never will I leave you. Never will I forsake you." That's in Hebrews chapter 13 verse 5, a final and emphatic declaration. These verses, they're more than just words on a page, they represent a consistent and unwavering truth. They're anchors for our souls, providing stability and hope in the midst of life's storms. They remind us that God's presence isn't some one-time event, a fleeting moment of connection. It's a lifelong promise, renewed in every generation and offered to every heart that believes, a timeless gift of companionship. When we feel alone, when doubt creeps in, these promises speak even louder, cutting through the noise and reminding us of His constant presence. They whisper hope into our fears and shine light into our darkness, guiding us through uncertainty and despair. God's presence is the thread that runs through every story, connecting the narratives and revealing his consistent character. Every season, through joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge, and every life, offering solace, guidance, and unwavering love. Joshua stood where Moses once stood, looking out at a land full of giants and challenges. He must have felt the weight of leadership, the fear of the unknown, and the pressure to be strong. But God's words to him were simple and sure: be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God goes with you. You know, we all have our own plains of Moab. We face new schools, new jobs, broken relationships, or uncertain futures. The unknown can really make us tremble, but the same God who went with Joshua goes with us too. His presence doesn't change with our circumstances. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the presence of God right in the middle of fear. Joshua didn't have to be brave all by himself. He had God's promise as his foundation, and so do we. No matter what we face, we can step forward because God steps with us. When you face your own giants, remember Joshua, remember God's words. You are not alone. God is with you, and honestly, that changes everything. There are times when God just feels far away. Prayers seem to bounce off the ceiling, life feels heavy, and hope feels pretty thin. In those moments, it's so easy to wonder if God has forgotten us. But here's the thing: feelings aren't facts. God's promise stands even when our hearts feel empty. When doubt creeps in, remember what's true. God's presence isn't measured by our emotions, it's anchored in His Word. Even when we can't see Him, He's working. Even when we can't feel Him, He is near. The Israelites doubted too, but God never let them go. There are some practical steps that can help us remember God's nearness. Open your Bible and read His promises out loud. Pray, even if your words are few. Talk to a friend who can remind you of God's faithfulness. Write down the ways God has helped you before. Each act, honestly, is a step toward hope. In seasons of doubt, don't give up. God is closer than you think. His promise to never leave or forsake you is as true now as it was on the plains of Moab. God's promise stands in every season of life. When the sun shines bright and when the storm clouds gather, He is there. When we celebrate victories or grieve losses, He does not change. His presence is our constant, our comfort, and our hope. The world, well, it will always bring uncertainty. Leaders will change. Circumstances will shift. But God's love remains. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. His promise to never leave or forsake us is the anchor for our souls. Let this truth fill you with hope today. You are never alone. God's presence goes before you, walks beside you, and holds you close. No matter what you face, His promise is enough. As you move into the day, remember Deuteronomy chapter 31 verse 6. Be strong and courageous. God is with you, and He will never leave or forsake you. That's the hope that holds us, now and always.